Hello and welcome to our Module 4 office hours. So we're coming into the end of Module 4 of our study, and some of you who are on campus students still have your tutes to attend this week. But I thought, having just visited one of the tutorials run by a fellow tutor, I would just clarify a few things just to allay any misunderstandings. So the focus at the moment has been, having submitted your learning journal assessment, your focus is now on your written assignment, which will be due over the next couple of weeks. So please check the date of that, the due date for that assignment. And also you're starting to grapple with the take-home exam practice problem. So I'd like to just speak briefly about those two matters. Well, the first thing is your assignment. And I've spoken with my students in my tutorial and heard their suggested topic areas. And I visited another tutorial and addressed their questions. So here are the fruits of that discussion. The first thing is that the assignment is quite small, only 1,000 words, which by the scale of essays and things is a relatively small assignment. I think the secret for this, whether you do the essay or the law reform submission, is to get very quickly into your narrow topic area so that you can use as many words as possible on that. One of the problems that's come through in the assessment so far with your learning journal submission has been a lot of students spend way too much time basically repeating the textbook explanation of the law of the area. So for this next assignment, try to avoid going into paragraphs and paragraphs of explanation of the current state of the law as if you're writing your own textbook. Yes, you do need to spend maybe a paragraph or just a few sentences establishing the particular area of the law that you're examining. But beyond that, you need to narrow it down, whether it's within the essay or the law reform submission, into your selected area of specialisation. So you can introduce your other sources and the relevant cases and develop your argument accordingly. For the essay, you're asked to examine an area which has relevance to your future career as a professional communicator, a journalist or a PR student, or perhaps as a media lawyer. Now in doing so, that itself allows you to narrow it down a little. So you can take the topic area you're choosing, it could be, for example, defamation, and you would explain that you're looking at defamation from the perspective of a public relations practitioner who needs to produce press releases in their work. Now, this would then allow you to start to look at the law of defamation, how it might apply to the issue of press releases, something to do with the publisher's responsibility, whether you, as the person writing the press release, which is later published by mainstream media, whether that means that you are responsible for the publication. So essentially applying the elements of defamation action to that scenario and then starting to explore which, if any, of the defences might apply. Along the way, you'd be looking at examples and coming up with your own suggestions of innovative ways to show caution to navigating these legal problems. So you'd find case examples and you'd find other academic sources to support your argument. As an academic essay, you would have a normal introduction, a body, and a conclusion. The body is where you would be discussing and putting forward your own views on the topic. If you're doing a law reform submission, your format would be more along the lines, while there's no set format, clearly early on you need to establish that there's a particular area of the law that you believe needs reforming. You would need to introduce that area, explain why it needs reforming, perhaps with reference to other cases or other academic literature in the area. And then you would need to outline your proposal for reform, giving justification for why your suggestion is the best possible way of approaching it, and coming up with a conclusion and perhaps some recommendations for reform. Now, you would address that law reform submission to a person or a body that deals with such things. Perhaps it's the relevant minister in a state or Commonwealth government. Perhaps it's all of the Attorneys General of the states and territories of Australia. Maybe it's a law reform commission, or perhaps it's a parliamentary inquiry or an industry NGO like the Australian Press Council, or perhaps the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance. The course guide explains, the site explains your various requirements of each piece of work. Again, the referencing system you use is up to you, but you do have to use that system thoroughly and properly according to the rules of the system of your choice. Again, the referencing does not count in your word count, although slabs of quotes and so on do count in your word count. So you would be best minimising the actual block quotes you're using, and wherever possible, paraphrasing things with appropriate references into your own words. But of course, the best thing is to use your own words wherever possible, and showing references where necessary where you have gained the material. So that's the law reform submission or the essay. I wish you luck with that. Please write to your tutors if you have further inquiries about the topic area or your approach. Now, coming to the actual learning problem that we're looking at this semester, just to establish a couple of things to make it clear. So for the balance of the semester, we're looking at this practice learning problem for your take-home exam. Now, to be quite frank, this practice learning problem touches upon many, many more areas than the final take-home exam can touch upon. It actually calls upon knowledge across 4, 5, 6 different areas that we're studying in the second half of the semester, plus 1 or 2 that we've learned earlier in the course. Now, the final take-home exam could not possibly ask you to cover that many and do that in the space available and do justice to each of them. So the final take-home exam will probably only focus upon 3 or 4 of those, and the strongest candidates for coverage in your take-home exam will be defamation and contempt of court, because these are the 2 biggest areas that particularly journalists and public relations practitioners and media lawyers need to know about. So you're likely to get tested on those 2 areas, plus a couple of others, depending on the scenario in the final take-home exam. Meanwhile, as you examine this practice take-home exam, the reason it has so many of the topic areas, and they cover racial vilification or discrimination, anti-terror laws, trespass, privacy, intellectual property, naming sexual assault victims, contempt, I think, and appropriating images and so on from Facebook. It covers a whole range of areas. The reason there are so many areas there is because these link to the topic areas we're covering in the balance of the course. So if you were able to do an answer that captures all of those things thoroughly, you'd probably need more than 1,500 words, but it's worth a stab at it. For the final take-home exam, when you get that, you'll see that it's much more achievable within the 1,500 words. So all I'm saying is bear with us on this. Problem-based learning relies on you thinking about scenarios like this and applying the knowledge you're getting to those scenarios. And this particular scenario, based around the anti-terror raid and the journalist who trespasses onto property to be able to capture that raid and proposes to post a whole host of material onto the website and social media as a result of that. This particular scenario is touching upon many, many more topics, but they all are important topics, and some of them might be examined in your final scenario. The final take-home exam will draw upon topics from across the breadth of the course, across both halves of the trimester of study. So, good luck in considering that. It might be wise if you, when looking at the learning problem, you pick out the topics that are relevant to the particular week and focus your research and drafting around those topics. And meanwhile, of course, talk to your tutors if you have any queries about the learning problem as well. We're going to be entering into Module 5 next week, the final module for the course. And we'll be looking at intellectual property, privacy, laws as they affect, especially as they affect PR, freelancing, and new media entrepreneurs. So there's still a lot ahead of us, and some of this may be examined in the final assessment items. Don't forget also to do your formative quiz, because those questions will be drawn upon for your final formative quiz in the final week of the semester. So until next time, good luck, and navigate those public holidays, and we'll see you soon.